Okay, tonight's homework will be about launching a new republic, George Washington's presidency, 1789 through 1800. Today we will be talking about the precedents set by President Washington during his presidency. Please title your notes, Launching a New Republic. Under the title, I would like you to set up Cornell Notes. We are going to be answering 4 questions in a Cornell Notes fashion. If there is any bold terms, please record them in your vocabulary section of your composition book. Please, between each question, leave 10 spaces or 10 rows of lines for you to answer the question. Number 1, explain how the nation's court system was established. Provide specific examples. Number 2, describe the President Washington's first cabinet. Number 3, what was Hamilton's financial plan for the country, not city? And number 4, how did Jefferson and Hamilton differ in their interpretation of the Constitution? Once you're done answering the questions, please summarize your notes at the end in a 3-sentence summary as well. George Washington took office of the United States on April 30th in 1789. He was inaugurated in the nation's first capital, New York City. Washington was unanimously chosen by the Electoral College. The vice president would be John Adams, the man who came in second. George Washington understood that everything that he did as the president was set a precedent, or the standard for which all other presidents would then follow. One of the first things he decided to do was to call himself and call the office Mr. President. This is in contrast to what John Adams thought the president should be called, which was His Highness, the President of the United States and the Protector of the Rights of the Same. Washington wanted to make the office more approachable. Washington's first act in the presidency was to create a national court. This would be the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court was created in the United States Constitution. Now it was time to set it up. So under the Federal Judiciary Act of 1789, Washington created a Supreme Court with 5 associate justices and 1 chief justice. It also provided for lower courts, both district courts and circuit courts, to deal with local problems and state level problems. John Jay, the noted Federalist, was the first Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Washington's second order of business was to create a cabinet. A cabinet is a group of advisors to advise the president on the ins and outs of running the country. George Washington, as the general of the Continental Army, understood that he did not understand everything about fighting, and he sought to surround himself with people who did certain things better than he could. He did the same thing with his cabinet and brought in the best of the best to run various departments. In the War Department, he would have Henry Knox, hero of the Revolutionary War, oversee the nation's defenses. He would have Secretary of State Thomas Jefferson oversee the State Department and their relations with other countries. Alexander Hamilton would oversee the Treasury, as well as creating the financial plan for the entire country. They would also tack on an Attorney General, who would be Edmund Randolph, and a Postmaster General named Samuel Osgood. This is essentially a dream team of advisors, one that the United States has never seen since. Upon Washington taking over, the United States was in horrific economic constraints. They had a $52 million debt, which is quite significant at the time. They needed to right the ship before it got any worse. Alexander Hamilton, as the Secretary of the Treasury, was tasked with creating a plan to get them out of debt. He felt that the U.S. must pay back its debt in order to gain the respect of other countries. So he created a plan that was based on the belief of strong central government, a government that encouraged business and industry, and a government that paid the debt of the nation's wealthy to gain their support for that government. Hamilton's plan would center around two main ideas: bonds and speculators. Bonds are essentially government loans that they get from private citizens and they promise to pay back those loans. A speculator is somebody who buys up government bonds at a low price from people who believe the government will not pay them back. Hamilton created a three-step plan in order to pay off the debt. Step number one was to pay off all war debt. He would do this by buying up all old national bonds issued before 1789 and buy up all state bonds, a total of amassing $80 million. The second portion of Hamilton's plan was to essentially make more money or raise government revenue. He was going to raise this revenue by imposing tariffs on imports coming into the country. These tariffs would raise money for the government. They would also encourage people to spend their money on US-made goods rather than imports, and also encourage people to create those imports at home, essentially making an economy that was based on locally made goods versus imports. Step 3 in Hamilton's plan was to create a national bank. What the bank would do was it would safeguard people's investments and safeguard government investments. The bank could make loans to businesses at a low interest rate that people could afford. It could also issue money, and so therefore we would have one standardized currency throughout the entire country. Essentially, the bank would be a solidifying arm in the government's economic plan. Although it was acknowledged that the government could not stand with the debt, many people did not like Hamilton's plan, and many, such as Thomas Jefferson, led strict opposition to the plan. They had already paid off their war debts, as many other southern states had, and they did not want to pay for northern states' debts. They felt that the speculators would get rich by buying up these bonds, and that the southern states did not like the tariffs because they had few factories and they got cheaper goods from trading with foreign merchants than they could with trading with northern merchants. Now, the essential problem with this idea of the bank was the different interpretations of the Constitution. James Madison and Thomas Jefferson believed that the bank was unconstitutional because the Constitution never said anything about a national bank. They believed that if the Constitution did not say it, well, it could not go through. Hamilton, on the other hand, believed in a flexible interpretation of the Constitution, pointing to the elastic clause, which is Article 1, Section 8, Clause 18, which gives Congress the necessary and proper power to do what is best for the United States. In the end, Hamilton wins by persuading Washington to approve the national bank and through other compromises. In order to compromise, Hamilton threw out an idea to Southerners. Essentially what it would do was, in order to accept his financial plan, he would push to have the capital moved to the South. The site that was picked for the capital was an area of land between Maryland and Virginia on the Potomac River. This area, that was essentially a swamp, would now be called the District of Columbia and would be the site of the nation's capital, a grand city designed in the ideas of Paris and other great European capitals. Now that you're finished, please go ahead and finish the final details on your questions. And lastly, please summarize your notes with a 3-sentence summary at the end. Thank you, and we'll see you tomorrow.